following on from the discussion earlier about hate crime.
Sure.
And Deputy Commissioner, you mentioned different categories. You had race-based hate crime, religious, anti-Semitic, Islamophobic, homophobic, transphobic, and disability, and perhaps some other categories. If you have religious hate crime and then also anti-Semitic and Islamophobic, are they counted twice, or what's the difference between those categories?
They can be, because a lot of this is obviously self-defined, so you can have more than one flag. Absolutely.
Right.
So, without too much detail, because of time constraints, you basically put a crime report or an incident report on. It has a number of drawdown flags based on the conversation you've had with the person reporting or the information you've got, and you would highlight those flags. So you can have a number of flags. In exactly the same way, you can have people who are vulnerable for a variety of other reasons as well.
So there could be one crime or one report of a crime which
could
might be
generate
counted.
a number of flags. Yes.
It could be counted twice or three times or perhaps more. If
certainly around incidents, yes.
Right. Okay. Fine. You often mention that there's a spike, after some of the terrorist incidents. How do you compile the figures? Because we often hear afterwards there's been a daily spike or a spike on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. What sources do you use? Are they all reported directly to the police, or do you use some outside agencies as well?
So some will be third-party reporting, but when we talk about crimes, as we're talking about in these, they're ones that have actually been reported to us. We monitor, so that, as you can imagine, when something happens, there's a number of systems that are put into place, including at a strategic level, daily monitoring. Others in the organisation are monitoring these and monitoring the data at a local borough level, sometimes almost lifetime. But we're doing it at a strategic level on a daily basis.
Do you still use Tell Mama as a source?
So we use Tell Mama, we use a number of other groups who bring third-party reporting into us. But to get to a crime, we've got to have incidents of a crime being reported.
If it's reassuring, Chester, so not all incidents would be a crime.
No.
Is what.
But when you put out a press release, for example, after a terrorist incident, saying that there's a spike, in hate crime, as happened, after the London Bridge attacks, are those figures relating to reported hate crime or actual crimes that reports that are then designated as crimes?
They are reports of crime. So when we talk about it, we're putting out crime data.
So they're reports of crimes, and will all of those go on to be, actual crimes, or will some of them be designated as not being crimes?
Well, gosh, it would be difficult to, without doing a detailed analysis of whether, because there's various categories, you can then what I call no crime, and very few would end up there. That's why you have to be very careful in this space around whether you talk about crimes or incidents, because incidents might not be crimes, and crimes might not have been reported as an incident.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to Tell Mama, are you aware that their funding was stopped, some years ago?
I'm not responsible, and I don't look into funding for third-party agencies. The reality is, if people want to tell us about incidents, to some extent we judge on what they tell us rather than the organisation telling us.
Do you think you need to be very careful with third parties that you're using just to make sure that what they're saying are credible?
Well, but I think we do that test before we record things as a crime. I think we have to be very careful, personally, as an organisation, saying you can only tell us through that person.
Are you happy with Tell Mama?
I'm not going to make judgments or statements about particular organisations. I'm going to say we use third-party reporting to inform the picture we have of what's going on in London.
Mr Mayor, are you
happy
with Tell Mama?
In answer to a question asked by Tom Copley, I made the point that actually we should be supporting third parties from making complaints. Often, a vulnerable victim, there could be a variety of reasons, doesn't want to report an incident to the police, but it could be passengers on a bus, it could be third-party groups, it could be a member of Parliament who report crimes to the police. The police then, as the experts, work through the incident to decide what response there should be. But I'd encourage anybody who sees criminality, whether it's criminal damage, whether it's a serious criminal offences against the person, including hate crime, to please report it to the people in positions of power, and influence. If you don't feel confident to report it to the police, report it to somebody else and they'll report it to the police.
With hate crime, I mean, you want people to have confidence in the figures that you put out. You know, there have been some incidents of people reporting very, very trivial things. For example, Amber Rudd, you know, I'm not a conservative, but she was reported for a hate crime for something that she said in her speech on immigration. The Essex Police and Crime Commissioner said after Brexit, in the supposed spike of hate crime there, that some people were just reporting, you know, they didn't like something that Nigel Farage said and reported it as a hate crime.
Heaven forbid.
How do you... Sorry?
Heaven forbid.
Well, okay, that's your opinion. But my question, to get back to being serious and scrutinising you, is how do you distinguish between those reports which are obviously trivial and those which are real hate crimes? You know, so because we do really need to make sure that anti-Semitic hate crime, for example, which is rising, is dealt with, and that's not classed in the same category as things which are utterly trivial. If you put out these figures very, very quickly, you know, without distinguishing between what's trivial and what's serious, how can people have confidence in your narrative?
But so on ours, there's a well-recognised threshold of when something's a crime and a description of what is a crime. So that's why I said to you about the issue about being clear about whether we're talking about hate crime incidents or hate crimes themselves. So lots of things can get classified as a hate incident. People make allegations to us about all sorts of things. Forget hate crime every single day. It doesn't necessarily meet the threshold to be a crime and to be investigated, and we've always been very clear on those sorts of things. So
when you talk about, you know, when you come out very quickly and you mention hate crime, they're actually reports. Do you not think that you should actually say that they are reported hate incidents rather than saying, first of all, they're hate crimes? Because some of them might not actually go on to be prosecuted. And that would then, you know, allow people to have the confidence that you're not including things which are trivial in your statistics that come out very, very quickly after, you know, an alleged spike.
Well, but in fairness, we often get accused if they don't come out quickly because of that incident around exactly what you said, that issue of being sure they're absolutely crimes. So we'll often talk about in the last week, this is what we had in terms of crime. So we can often only do that. There's usually about a 2 or 3 day delay from something we reported as an incident to ending up as a crime on the system. In terms of doing it, it might have been crimed if it doesn't get into the central figures and that reporting back to us. So we're clear when we're talking about hate crime.
And are all the incidents that are reported on the same day, are they all, when you give your daily figures, are they for incidents reported on that day, or are they for incidents that actually were carried out on that day?
No,
is there a possibility that, you know, people report something, but it was actually done, you know, a few days before?
As there is with every crime. So I mean, we haven't touched on it. We're getting crimes reported now that occurred 15, 20 years ago.
So when,
and it's really important, and they end up in the crime figures today.
Okay, so when there's a, you know, you say there's a spike after a terrorist incident, are some of those, you know, alleged incidents maybe happen on days before they're reported?
Without doing a detailed analysis, we can do all of that.
Yeah. We
can break them down by times when they're reported. We can break them down by who reports them, where they come through third parties. But the reality is, most of those things, even themselves, as I say, what I would call, let's take hate crime out of this, all the other categories of crime, you go away on holiday, come back and your house has been broken into. Is that a burglary today, or is it a burglary when you went on holiday?
Well,
but that's normal.
I'm not sure that you've
No, in fairness, that's perfectly normal. That happens with every type of crime reported.
Okay, it's just that, you know, if you come out and you say there's a spike in hate crime like 1 or 2 days after a terrorist incident, some of those incidents that are reported might have happened before the actual terrorist incident took place. I mean, so I'm not sure that you answered the question there. But one thing... In
fairness, if I may, I think I did answer the question. You might not have liked the answer.
That is possibly true.
That's a different test.
Yeah, that is
I did answer the question.
Yeah. Finally, where are your figures published so that everyone can see them transparently?
So the Mayor touched on earlier in terms of the works that's going on around the MOPAC dashboard. You'll have hate crime on the dashboard in terms of the work around that. So you'll be able to see...
Can we see them now, or is that something for the future?
I don't know if it's live today.
It's
ready for its soft launch, but that will allow you down to a borough level to look at particular hate crime.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.